Good morning, everybody. I will wait for a few minutes for a few more people to join. So, good morning. Welcome to my webinar. So, I'm going to talk about Wi-Fi 7. It's coming, and I think I will give you some good reasons why you really want to have Wi-Fi 7. I can almost not wait to get it. The only thing is that when we have the access points, we might not yet have the clients to work with them. But anyway, let's kick it off. I will do, well, not much of an introduction. I will just start with what came before. So basically Wi-Fi 5, before Wi-Fi 7, we had all the Wi-Fi's 1 up to 6E, which each added some stuff. And Wi-Fi 7 also adds some new stuff. I think it's important to at least talk a little bit about what Wi-Fi 6 brought us, because Wi-Fi 7 is clearly building on the things that Wi-Fi 7 brought us. So about Wi-Fi 6, this brought us the OFDMA, and that's about having each of the packets, which is a column in the scrolling box here, each of the packets being split in different resource units, which are color coded here, which are sent to different clients at the same time. So this is different. This is some kind of multi-user, but different from the multi-user MIMO, because this multi-user MIMO, that's about sending totally different packets into different directions to send them to different clients, or receiving packets from different direction and just using a lot of math to split out what is coming from which client at the same time. So these are two different mechanisms to serve multiple clients. And for the second one, you need to have physical separations between the different clients. If they're on top of each other, they will. You can not do MIMO. They really need to be spread out for you to be able to connect to them. So in this case, so we have a single packet, resource units, And each of the resource units again is split in by, well, what we'll talk about later, different tones. The other thing that you have is we had more QM from 256, which is 8 bits to 10 bits. And at the end of my presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about what this is and how it does. So this is really helpful when you're close by the access point. If you're further away, your signal to noise ratio will reduce, and then it will drop off to 256 QM, then 64 QM, and then at the end, if you're really far away, no QM. Longer symbols also, which reduces overhead, so that's nice too. Another thing for mostly for IoT devices is that you will have reduced power consumption because they can just be told when to wake up every so often, and then immediately have access to the Wi-Fi, and for the other time just not have Wi-Fi and not use the battery for that. The BSS coloring spatial reuse is also something that is nice, although I'm not really seeing it much yet. Then there's the other thing, Wi-Fi 6E, that brought us 6 gigahertz. And I think there's a much overlooked feature here that 6 gigahertz brings us. So with 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, if you increase your bandwidth every time you double it, your power density goes down. So you still have the same 20, 23, 30 dBm output power, or maybe should say dBi output power, but it is spread over more bandwidth. So from 20 to 30, 40, you have double the bandwidth, then for 40 to 80, again, double the bandwidth, and then from 80 to 160, again, double the bandwidth. But each time, the amount of power that you have also reduces by the same amount as you're doubling. So 3 dB for each doubling. And on 6 gigahertz, you do not need that, or you don't have that, because you're allowed to keep the same power spectral density. So the output power for a device, if you double its double the bandwidth, then you will actually increase the power, or are allowed to increase the power that you're sending at. So for the same 20 megahertz, you will still have the same power as before. And the nice thing about that is that with 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, when you increase your bandwidth, you are actually decreasing your range and decreasing your signal to noise ratio, well, which are related, of course. That's the signal to noise ratio will decrease your range. And that is not necessarily what happens on the 6 gigahertz. So actually, if you want to have 160 megahertz wide bandwidth on 6 gigahertz, it will probably have much more range than when you're on the 5 gigahertz, because it doesn't need to step down the power for the single 20 megahertz parts that are in there. So remember this. 6 gigahertz, although because of the higher frequency, it has less range. That is offset if you're trying to use a wider bandwidth compared to 5 gigahertz. So 6 gigahertz can actually have better range than 5 gigahertz, as long as the bandwidth is not 20 megahertz, but 40 or 80 or even more. So something interesting, I found a blog from Uniper that actually describes this with some small graphs. And Again, I think this is an overlooked feature. Even I was overlooking it because I just added this this morning when I suddenly realized, yeah, well, this is the probably the biggest feature of 6 gigahertz in some regards. So that's about 6E, and now up to Wi-Fi 7, why it will be totally amazing and more of that kind. So some things that you need to know is Wi-Fi 7 is designed to improve efficiency, again, throughput, again, and latency, which is sort of unique to Wi-Fi 7, maybe more so than Wi-Fi 6, although of course with using the different resource units, you will also improve latency on Wi-Fi 6. Uh, of course, it is backwards compatible with all the previous Wi-Fi versions. And Wi-Fi 7, its features, those will not just work on the 6 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz, but also on the 2.4 gigahertz, which is different compared to Wi-Fi 5, which was only working on the 5 gigahertz, the AC version. Of course, you need your client devices to be also Wi-Fi 7 to actually get the benefit for all of the things that are on Wi-Fi 7. If you have two Wi-Fi 7 APs doing mesh, of course, they will have all the benefits too. The interesting fact is that Wi-Fi 7 is only estimated to be ratified at the end of next year, although we're already seeing the first Wi-Fi 7 devices out there, and ours coming later this year. So yeah, Wi-Fi 7, also known as 11BE, there's just that you know. So one of the things that we had, so in Wi-Fi 6, we went to 10 bits per symbol, 1024 1K QEM. Now we're going to 12 bits, 4K QEM, which increases our throughput by about 20%. So 12 is 20% more than 10. So that's where that comes from. But yeah, you need to be close to the access point. So keep that in mind. It will not help you much if you have one app AP and everybody is far away, because as farther away you get, you first drop down to the 1K or QM, then to the 256, and at the end, well, then for 64, and at the end, no QM at all. So less and less additional throughput. Anyway, if you're close to your access point, it will increase your speed. And of course, even if you only have some of your clients close to your access point, having them speed up frees up airtime for all the other stuff. So it is helpful regardless. Then the other thing is that where we went from 80 to 160 with Wi-Fi 6. Now with Wi-Fi 7, we're even allowed to do 320 megahertz wide bandwidth. But yeah, not so much for us in Europe and Etsy, unless it's your only AP at home. Then of course you will go for the 320 megahertz and take it all. But as soon as you have more than one access point, because in Europe we're only allowed to use 540 megahertz in total, or sorry, 480 megahertz in total, we only have one 320 megahertz wide channel, or three 160s. So with a 3-channel plan, we always need to go to the 160 megahertz wide things and not to a single 320. Again, remember that if you go up from each of these, your range will not drop, which is different from Wi-Fi 6 and before. So we only have 480 megahertz additionally with the 6 gigahertz. But yeah, just remind yourselves that the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz that we had before are just 400 megahertz, so it's more than a doubling. We're just still being jealous about the US, of course, but even being jealous about the US, we still have our doubling, so it's nothing to sneeze at. One of the things that was a little bit sad is that 6 gigahertz is for indoor only in Europe. We're not allowed to use it outdoor. So, and I tried to ask our Dutch regulatory agency if I could somehow get a specific channel made available to me for outdoor, and they just said no. Which I found a little bit strange, because obviously there are some people who are allowed to use the 6 gigahertz outdoor at the moment. So it is a little bit strange. Maybe he just doesn't want to go into the weeds with me to make that work, too much work for him. Another thing that I think that is really great about 6 gigahertz, but let's be honest, we already had that with Wi-Fi 6E, is you do not have DFS. You can just use your fixed channels. So that is all very nice about Wi-Fi 6E and Wi-Fi 7 on the 6 gigahertz band. Now for some stuff that, some improvement that we have for Wi-Fi 7. So with Wi-Fi 6, I mean, some bandwidth is assigned, or some resource units are assigned to each user. And if a resource unit is unused or assigned but not used, then it is just left unused. But on Wi-Fi 7, the access point is able to add that part and also use it to send to the client, which improves the total throughput that you have. You have less loss. So that is again a nice feature of Wi-Fi 7. So I've been talking about resource units a few times, and I think I need to tell you a little bit about resource units, just to fresh up your memory. So if I go a little bit back here we have different channels, either 20 megahertz channels or 40 megahertz channels. So we have those channels, and you can see that our bandwidth is split into different channels. Well, what the resource units are just sort of sub-channels within your Wi-Fi packet. So instead of having a single packet that is going to all the different clients, you can assign a sub-channel or resource unit to a client. So in this case, it is made up of 9 sub-channels here, 4 here. So it depends a little bit on the width of your sub-channel, of your resource unit, how many different clients you can address. There's one additional thing here, and that is it's not like with or not like we are using it on the channels themselves. Usually, you might expect that all the clients are using the same width of resource units. That's not true. You can assign one small one to a client, but a very big one to another client. So you can mix and match as long as the total fits. And here you can see in the table, you can see how many sub-channels, resource units you will have depending on the bandwidth. And also something that I will come back later to, the number of tones. And for now, just think about tones as sub channels. So resource units are just sub channels of your channel. And depending on the channel width, you can have more resource units to assign. And you can mix and match as long as the total covers your bandwidth. Okay. Then another thing is that, of course, in previously with Wi-Fi, if we have some interference on a channel, so say this is 40 megahertz, and we have some interference in this part of this 10 megahertz part, then there's the only thing that we can do is throw everything away, and we will lose our spectrum. But with Wi-Fi 7, we can just tell the access point not to use the part that is interfered with. So if there's a subchannel resource unit that is interfered with, we can just take out that one resource unit. So if there's a big spike somewhere that is going to interfere, you can actually just slice out that part and not use it and improve your throughput. Okay, then the things that really get me interested. I see that I have a question. I will come back to that later. The things that really get me interested about Wi-Fi 7 is the so-called multi-link operation, or MLO. You will hear lots of people talking about MLO, I think. But MLO is really interesting in the sense that you can use it in 3 different ways. The first way to use it is to improve latency by just switching to the first available channel, or sorry, yeah, channel radio. So if the device has a 2.4 and a 5 gigahertz radio and it needs to send something to the end access point, or the access point needs to send something to the device, and it is high priority, it will just check which of the radios is available first, which channel is available first, and then send it out over that one channel, and it will be received on the other end. I think this will greatly reduce latency for packets, which would be very nice for time-sensitive applications like voice over IP or voice over Wi-Fi in this case. So that's one thing that makes me very happy. The other thing is that you can use MLO, multi-link operation, to improve your throughput. So if you have multiple radios on your client and multiple radios on your access points, just use all of them at the same time and just load balance your packets. So send the packets on the channel which is available at that time. And this doesn't need to be the level. So on a 2.4 gigahertz, maybe you have only 20 megahertz and you have 80 megahertz on your 5 gigahertz band, then you will send 1 packet on your 2.4 and 4 packets on your 5 gigahertz, and just improve your speed that way by 25% compared to only using your 5 gigahertz. And if you also have a 6 gigahertz radio, of course, you can improve it even more. So this is a very nice way to improve the throughput with Wi-Fi 7, which is unique. And then lastly, improving reliability. Again, because you have multiple radios, you can make use of those. And in this case, maybe you just want to be sure that your Wi-Fi voice over IP packets all get through to your voice over IP phone or whatever device that you're using for that. You send the packets on all the radios at the same time. It's sure that it will come through on one of the radios at least. Even if it's interfered on the 5 gigahertz, then it will be on the 2.4 gigahertz. And if it's interfered there, maybe it will get through, or probably it will get through on the 6 gigahertz. So that is again another plus compared to the previous Wi-Fi things. I think the three MLO operations, multi-link operation applications are the one thing, or maybe you should say the three things that really get me very happy about the Wi-Fi 7 capabilities. The next thing is that we are now allowed to use up to 16 antennas per radio for MIMO. So that will make it possible to get even more throughput. And yeah, I didn't see marketing coming up with it yet, but I'm sure it is coming. If you count everything together, you get 75 gigabits of throughput potentially. Yeah, okay, 75 gigabits. Yeah, right. Well, don't think that will happen. And I think that our APs will, and also our clients will look very interesting. So this is how I picture those devices to look. Lots of prickly things as antennas. And I also think that we need to be painfully close to the AP to get this, because as soon as you get a little bit farther away, then you will not have your 4K thingies, and yeah, it will drop off pretty fast. And of course, our IPs will probably have something like 10 gigabits, dual 10 gigabit at best. So you also then suddenly we change from the wireless being the bottleneck to our Ethernet being the bottleneck. So in the end, it will be it will potentially be a improvement, but 75 gigabits is probably not a real world throughput to expect. 20 gigabits at best, and even that is probably already pushing it. So again, like every time before, in the first year you will expect to have little benefit, and as times improve and more Wi-Fi clients change to the latest version, you will see more improvement. Possibly it will be a little bit better with Wi-Fi 7 because there's not that much Wi-Fi 6E installed, and getting use of the 6 gigahertz will probably help this AP improvement speed ahead a little bit faster than with the previous releases. So talking about the roadmap, sometime in Q4, we expect that we will have our first 4x4x4 Wi-Fi 7 AP for the cloud. It will have two 10 gigabit ports. So for anybody who wanted to have redundancy on their Ethernet, that will probably be part of it. A little bit later, we will have a 2x2x2. So it's only 4x4x4, not even 8x8x8 or 16x16x16. So I haven't seen the pictures yet, but it will not be like this. So be happy about that. I also noticed that in our roadmap, we also have a outdoor model. However, for our outdoor model, yeah, well, we're not allowed to use 6 gigahertz outdoor. So this device for the 6 gigahertz it being 2 by 2 by 2 does not make a lot of sense yet. So maybe they can somehow make the third radio usable in another way. But for now, it's a little bit hard to imagine this being sold in the EU. However, of course, although this is an outdoor device, we have seen that in some warehouse environments, especially cold storage and things like that, they put in outdoor devices which are actually indoor. So in that case, maybe a device like this would still be feasible to be used. But then we need some way to unlock the 6 gigahertz on those devices. Okay, so that was our roadmap. Yeah, again, we are doing everything around our cloud. So these devices will be in our cloud things. So I will get back to one question about, let me go back pretty quickly about this one. So about the not being used, in Wi-Fi 6, each user gets assigned amount of, it gets assigned a resource unit to be used for to send to or to receive from, because it's a two-way thing now. So in some cases, a resource unit might be assigned to user 3, but there is no packet to send to user 3. For instance, it's maybe a voice over IP call, and there's just silence, and there are no packets. So in that case, it was assigned, but it's not being used. So in that case, on the fly, the access point can just fill it in and send the additional send some additional packets to the client at that time. So in that case, this resource units will also be used, although it was not initially assigned to it. And then for the other parts, let me see, where was it? Oh yeah, here. If a resource unit was assigned to a user, but you have interference, you can just unassign that resource unit. So in this case, you will actually not use it. So it's just different from here, where you will use the not used part. In this case, you will actually never use it because it's interfered with. I hope that somewhat answers the question that what I mean about being in use by anybody. So if maybe I should add one thing about this. So actually, say that this is 160 megahertz width on 5 gigahertz, and you have a neighbor using 20 megahertz somewhere in your 160 megahertz on a different channel. You can just tune out the channel, 20 megahertz channel of your neighbor, and use the other parts of the 160 megahertz. So it is a pretty nice feature. Okay. Then, because I just want to point out how amazing the technology is that we are working for. I want to talk about QAM and tones. So I don't know if you ever wondered what QAM actually is. I think I have to talk about amplitude modulation, um, phase shift keying, and tones. So for amplitude modulation, it's pretty easy. If you just have a single bit thingy, you just send nothing, or you send a wave, a sign, a constant sign. So nothing is a 0, a wave is a 1. If you want to go to 2 bits, then you actually are going to play with the different levels of your how loud your sign is that you're sending. If it's again, if it's 0, then it's a 0, or double 0 in the case of 2 bits. If it's on 1/3, then it's 0, 1. If it's 2/3, it's 1, 0, and if it's full on 100%, it's 1, 1, or 3 in decimal. So this is amplitude modulation, and you can see that you can split it up with all times smaller and smaller differences between the amplitude to make more and more bits. So expect that with our 4K 12-bit QEM, we might have 6 bits coded in our amplitude. So that's our quite a bit of different levels to distinguish, and the other 6 bits will be in the phase shift keying. So with phase shift keying, if you have 1 bit, so you always have a sign going, but if you want to send out that the next one is a 1, then you change the phase. So in this case, you have your sign, and then you skip half of it, and for the next one, so you skip this part, and then you go on with sending out, and that way you can code 0s and 1s in a single bit. If you have 2 bits, you can do something like that, but instead of going half of it, you can go shift with a quarter, the half, or 3/4 of your thing, and then you will get different signals. Again, 0 when there's no shift in the phase. When you have 90 degrees, a 1, 180 degrees, a 1, 0 or 2, 270 degrees, 1, 1 or 3. So again, here more bits, and the smaller and smaller your phase shift will be. And QM is nothing different than putting those two together, both having the different levels and also the phase shifts, which they sort of try to represent with the dots here. I don't think it's actually square, but it's about an idea. So for the different things, for QMs, 64 QM, we had 6 bits, probably something like 3 bits or 4 bits in the amplitude, and 2 or 3 bits in the phase shifts, and something like that's also with 256 and 1K. And then you see for each time you have 2 bits additionally, because the from 6 to 8, it's 2 6 added, so 33%. From 2 bits added from 8 to 10, you have 25% added. For the 4K, it's again 2 bits, but it's only 20%. And I really wonder if they will ever go to 16K QM. It's still a small benefit, but it will be pretty hard to have all those phase shifts and different levels. So that's a little thing. I really think that 4K QM might be the last step, but then maybe if you're really pushing, maybe you could do this too. But again, even if you do this, you will have to get still closer to the access point. And I already say to everybody that they need to be on top of it to have this 4K QM active. So, well, we will see. But I'm not done yet, because what I said before about the resource units being something like a subchannel, the tones are sub-subchannels. So each of your resource units is built off on tones, and each of the tones has a certain bandwidth. If you ever played or looked at the movie where they had a modem, a data communication modem, that was making a connection, you could hear it send all kinds of sounds, which were around 4 kilohertz. So that's for the and then if we're going to ADSL and VDSL, you see that the same 4K kilohertz is being used, but it's sort of, you have this different modems, and each time they shift it by that 4 kilohertz. With Wi-Fi 6, we do not have a 4 kilohertz tone, which we actually have a 68 kilohertz tone, and that would be 256 tones for 20 megahertz up to 4096 tones for the 320 megahertz. And so then if you look back at the page that I had in the front, you will see that the resource units also have a different number of tones. So that's how it's made up. Each of the tones are just shifted. The magic is done with digital signal processors, which are hardwired fast Fourier transformations, which are used to quickly translate the values of the QM single uh, um, or the value into a QM single, and then on reception back to a value. So the OUF-DMA is part of these things. If you look at Wikipedia, they mention this. It's a whole lot of university level mathematics, all in that chip. That's very small black box on a circuit board that makes it possible. It's actually really, really cool how much work is being done on to make all of this possible. Any questions? Maybe I should ask a question to you. Are you as excited for Wi-Fi 7 as I am? Okay, I got at least one yes. Okay, about MLO, multi-link operation. Of course, both devices need to be Wi-Fi 7. Both devices need to support it, and both devices need to have multiple have a radio that will support multiple bands or have multiple radios. And actually, if the device is connecting to the access point, it will just see a single connection, as it were. But it will use the different radios, different bands as it sees fit. And again, depending on in which mode you put it. If you put it in low latency mode, or you put it in high reliability mode or high throughput mode, depending on that, it will use the different radios, different bands, differently. And yes, if you go from Wi-Fi 6E to Wi-Fi 7, it is quite a massive step. That said, I think that they were already working on Wi-Fi 7 even before they finished up on Wi-Fi 6, and they were already doing it during the Wi-Fi 6E development. Oh, will the working of MLO cause a very dynamic radio environment? Yes. Yes. Oh, yeah. And there will be a recording of this this presentation. It should be ready in about an hour after the presentation is done. About the Wi-Fi 7 clients, um, I haven't seen much happen there. It's more in the AP business, strangely enough, that they are really talking about. But it wouldn't surprise me that the next round of the Samsung phones will have Wi-Fi 7 capabilities already. And yes, finding faults will be hard, but I don't think it will be very much harder than it was before, because especially with the with the MIMO, multiple input, multiple output, it was already very hard to do fault finding if you have MIMO enabled. So I think that in most cases, when we have issues, we will probably start to disable some of the features. So try to avoid using MIMO in some way. Then also in an environment where you have problems, disable multi-link uh, operation to find if there's a problem there. But for sure, we will have some teething problems where devices are supposed to be both in high reliability mode for MLO, and the other, the one of the sites just decides not to listen to one of the radios and then drops packets, stuff like that. I'm sure that will happen. But okay, it keeps the job of a support engineer interesting, right? So yeah. Okay, any more questions? So if you think of any questions later, just send them out. Um, um, Send them to support@engeniusnetworks.eu, and I will probably read them and give you an answer immediately if I know, and a little bit later if I need to ask myself, because I know how much I do not know, or I have a clue how much I do not know, and for sure I do not know everything. I see here somebody asking about can this accommodate a 10 gigabits fiber backhaul? If you're thinking about using it as a point-to-point solution, remember that it is not outdoor. But if you're looking at having one of those APs and having clients connect to it and then saturating your 10 gigabits internet connection, it should be possible to saturate the link. Like I said, like I showed in the table, the devices might be able to do up to 75 gigabits with the MIMO. So yeah, well, we have to divide it by 4 to get to a 4x4 situation. So it will probably more be like 18 gigabits that you might be able to do, assuming your clients are also 4x4x4. So you should be able to get close to a 10 gigabits total throughput from a single AP. If you have multiple APs connected to your internet connection, yes, but that was always the case, of course. If you have enough clients with enough access points, you can saturate any bandwidth of internet connection. Oh, I didn't mention, but there's a handout that you can download with the presentation. So should be visible in the handout thingy. So I see several interesting questions. Let me start with answering one question that is easily answered, because somebody is asking about that. So if it's about cloud, you will always see that if you're logged into the Cloud EnGenius AI, you will see this thingy here. You can click on it, and you can start to send us a message with an issue. This is the quick way for cloud things. If it's not related to cloud, just send us an email to support@engeniusnetworks.eu. So that is it. Again, there in the handouts, there's the PDF with the complete presentation. And then about another interesting technical question about having fiber connections. You have to remember that you also need to power your access points. So using a Ethernet cable with power over Ethernet, expect all these devices to need PoE++, BT. You will need to have that cable anyway. So that would be maybe as long as you can get away with that, we will probably prefer to use the Ethernet, just because we can also supply power over it. For the other situation, that if the speed gets any higher than that, maybe at a certain point we will need to switch to fiber. That said, fiber maybe makes most sense for outdoor models, because those may be spread more apart. Okay. Everybody found the handouts and downloaded them? If somebody still needs time to download them, they can let me know. Again, if you have any follow-up questions of any kind, don't hesitate. Just send an email to support@engeniusnetworks.eu. Oh, and what I said, I think you, especially about the range and coverage of the 6 gigahertz, I think you might want to just look at the page from for the blog from Uniper. If I had a little bit more time, I would probably have put everything on that. So this one. If I had a little bit more time, I would probably have elaborated a little bit more on this. But I think this is a very important point to make about the 6 gigahertz, and it's not something that people talk about a lot. And yes, again, the whole thing is recorded, so you can you should be able to look at it. And I don't know exactly when. First, we have a on our GoTo platform. It will be available. I think there will be a link in the email that you get sent after the webinar. And also, I know that our marketing department is putting all the webinars on YouTube. So it should be visible in 3 different versions. And additionally, the invite that you received, if you click on it after the meeting, you will get to view the webinar too. It will then not link to to the form. It will still link to a form, but if you fill it in, it will then link you to the recording. So you have at least 4 different ways to get access to the recording later. Okay, that's it from me. Have a very nice day, and see you soon. I think we will have a little bit less webinars for next 2 months or something like that, but there will still be a few, and then by September we will have the usual 1 webinar every 2 weeks again. Okay, bye bye.